This has been Strictly Ball Business.
Strictly ball business.
Strictly ball business.
I like that video.
Shit. Hey, welcome to Strictly Ball Business. It's me, Alec, here with Dalton. We're talking basketball, baby. And we just had a huge trade that happened today. We're going to talk a bit about that. But firstly, want to say happy episode 52. Right? This is 52, right? Oh, raise the banner. We are at a full year, baby. Woo! So, what we need you to do is subscribe. If you're listening to this hootenanny, you need to subscribe right at this moment. Today, we are going to get into some fun topics. First of all, we will talk about Donovan Mitchell getting traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, as that came out of nowhere. Everybody thought he was going to the Knicks. But here he goes to Cleveland. He goes from Utah to Cleveland. So hope he enjoys having a worse city. But, great team possibly. So we'll talk about that. We'll also look at teams with the highest winning percentage since 2001. That was the year, right?
2000. This century.
So since we hit the 2000 mark and we found technology and we figured out modern medicine, these teams have figured out how to pioneer through the struggles and have figured out how to benefit from the new science. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll also talk a bit about a player that we think is going to bounce back this season in a big way, and that's Paul George. Obviously, he's fought injuries the last couple of years, and last season, him and Kawhi both were out for plenty of time. So looking for a great season from him and the Clippers. So we're going to dive into that later in the episode. We're also going to talk about who would possibly want Russell Westbrook if he ultimately gets traded to like Indiana or some other team and gets bought out. Who's going to sign him after he gets bought out someday? Whether it's halfway through the year, 1 month in the season, we're kind of expecting a buyout. It's going to happen at some point. So we'll just talk a little bit about that. What was our last topic? I know we had one more.
The AD trade to the Suns. A possible Basketball Forever posted a possible trade. It was basically an AD Ayton Johnson swap. We'll talk more about it. It's just, would it help both franchises? Does it make sense? Is it likely? Go into that.
Yeah. I mean, Basketball Forever does tend to post a lot of weird trades sometimes, and then they act like it was from a source, and I'm like, I don't know who you think said this. Like, you guys are making up sources. But we will talk a bit about that theoretical trade as, depending on how this season goes, if it's another down year for Anthony Davis, I definitely believe it's possible he'd be on the trading block. Obviously, completely depends on what LeBron does after this season. But yeah, we'll talk a bit about that in this episode as well. Starting off, I think we should get into the Donovan Mitchell trade. He is now a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers as he gets traded for 3 unprotected first-round picks, 2 pick swaps, Colin Sexton, who gets a fresh 4-year, $72 million extension as part of this, Ochai Ajayi, I don't know, I can't remember.
Ochai Agbaji.
Okay.
Ochai Agbaji.
Yeah, I wasn't looking at his name when I was saying it, but so that's a name. And Lauri Markkanen, I know is also going back to Utah, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Is there one more player in there?
Nope, just those 3 players.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess first off, do you think that was fair compensation for Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah, I do. It's funny. We talked about it, and I'm gonna play it back just as the memories fade. As we talked about, you're like, why the fuck would the Jazz want? We were talking about a Bogdanovich Colin Sexton trade. And you're like, why the fuck would the Jazz want Colin Sexton? And it's just kind of clear they just want somebody to be out there to sell tickets because they're willing to clear house. Conley and Bogdanovich are just basically sitting in the exit right now. There's no reason for them to stay. Maybe Bogdanovich because he's expiring, but Conley's got to be looked to get bought out or maybe traded. But yeah, I really like this draft. I'm a huge fan. Donovan Mitchell to the Cavaliers. You and I are big fans of what the Cavaliers did. This is just a great next step. This puts them as top 5 in the East. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, top 5 is certainly optimistic. We'll see if they can get there. I think certainly they have a good shot to make the playoffs. They were looking good last year before injuries hurt them. But, love this addition for them. And certainly I think they're in that 5 to 6 seed range and could certainly finish higher than that. Just kind of depends on where things land. But, going back to that Colin Sexton thing, like I originally thought maybe he was too good for the rebuild, but he certainly, for what you're bringing him in for, $18 million a year, that's a bargain. So it makes sense to bring him in. He's still really young. If, he doesn't stay with you long term as you turn this thing around, you can trade him in a couple years as he gets better and you can get some more picks and continue the rebuild. It's really a flexible move because, in a couple years, maybe they're really good and Colin Sexton's a big part of that and they are winning sooner than they expected. If they hit on some picks early. And in the flip side, if he's not good and they're not winning a ton of games, then whatever. They have a ton of picks and they can still get something for him in a trade regardless because 18 million is not that much.
No, and I mean, that salary is very similar to what Malik Beasley's making just over a few more years. So it's like if you compare Malik Beasley to Colin Sexton, it's just miles bargain. It's miles better. It's just that's all there.
I mean, he's a very efficient scorer, and you're bringing in a guy immediately who can score in the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. So you're gonna have it's gonna be a messy offense, but at least it'll look all right. I'm actually super excited about Ochai Agbaji. We talked about him on our when we did our draft prep, who's gonna draft whom, who's gonna be a sneaky pick, and I said that he's probably gonna be I see him as the Chris Duarte of this draft, where he's an older player, but he comes in and just produces right away. And
was he a first round pick this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was the Cavs' first round pick. He was 22nd. I was a super big fan of him. I really like that. I mean, both him and Colin Sexton kind of add a little. We just made a video about how there's not really a young core here, and they really need to build a lot. I mean, granted, now they have
something, sure, but
sure. Well, now they have.
Ultimately, we're gonna have to see where these draft picks land.
Right. So Danny Ainge pulling out all the stuff. He did it. 3 pick swaps, 7 first-round picks between Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. That's a haul. Plus, the players in the Timberwolves trade are very mad. Malik Beasley might be something. Jared Vanderbilt's a great piece.
Yeah. They're good role players, but realistically, those guys aren't going to be there in 4 years.
Right. Plus, this trade kind of gives direction on where they want to go with. Granted, Colin might not be here the whole time, but he's certainly a great young player to have, and I just talked a bunch about Ochai. So both of them, and Lauri Markkanen's fine. He's a fine piece.
Yeah, they tread water for a bit now. I would have preferred to see Colin Sexton get his bag, get more money, but the injury last year really screwed him, and I would have loved to see him play on a team that has winning aspirations. But this is the way it turned out, and maybe he gets traded in a year or two when a contender realizes, hey, Colin Sexton for 18 million is not bad.
No, yeah, he's definitely going to be a really nice piece to have in there. I mean, let's talk about the Cavs. So we touched on.
Yeah, let's
they're
get
obviously
into
going to be really good. This is going to be a very small backcourt because you got to assume it's either going to. I mean, who do they roll at the 3? Because Donovan Mitchell, I've said, is a smart defender, very limited by his size. Obviously, Darius Garland also limited by his size. Both are very smart players. Not a good defensive backcourt. Do you put in Karras? Is Karras your 3, or do you put in more defense as Okoro and try to have LeVert as your 6th man?
Yeah, I think LeVert comes off the bench. Okoro ultimately would be the one I would start as long as he looks good in camp, because you're going to need some scoring off your bench regardless. You just traded away Lauri Markkanen, so that's some size you just got rid of in your starting lineup, regardless of him not being a great defender. He was still tall, so that added something. So I would not be that thrilled to see a skinny guy like Caris LeVert starting games. He can't really be relied upon defensively. He's shown us that, but I think as a scorer, he can do something in this league.
Yeah, right. And I mean, yeah, that Lauri Markkanen is not the best. He's not a good defender. He's not this, but what his size allowed for the Cavs to have a really versatile defense. Even though he's not a good defender, just having him on the floor, same as with Allen and Mobley. They were so hard to get a score in the paint. That's why their defense was so effective. We'll see how it's affected now. Obviously, they're going to take some steps back, but their offense is going to be outrageous now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're going to take too much of a step back. Obviously, I think the offense being this much better should help the defense too. It's going to take some pressure off them. And Donovan Mitchell is constantly trying to get in the fast break. And he's going to be hungry on this team, excited to get them to a championship, hopefully.
Right, and now maybe he likes Jared Allen, so maybe he'll actually have some two-man game other than like when he didn't, because he didn't like Gobert. He had like 4 passes a game.
Yeah, I mean, they're different type of player, and like I'm really curious about Donovan and Evan Mobley because Evan Mobley's a really gifted scorer from a lot of different parts of the court that Jared Allen simply isn't. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see those guys grow together. I think that this is a really exciting young core. Like they already, we talked about, we had a video about it. We already talked about him being one of the best young cores in the NBA. And then they add Donovan Mitchell, a bona fide star in this league, who could still get better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, definitely. I don't think we've seen his peak yet. And just adding what a steal for the Cavs. They were able to keep Allen, Mobley, Garland, and Karras and all their best good young players. Obviously, we knew Colin Sexton was out the door. Laurie was kind of and Ochai was like we already didn't know where he was going to be on the roster anyway. So those two weren't surprised. None of those three were surprises. But the fact that
the top player they traded was like a guy everybody knew they wanted to upgrade from, and like this is a clear upgrade. Yeah.
So I'm super excited. I'm glad he didn't go to the Knicks. It's just a dumpster fire. They can only add so much. Maybe down. Sorry, Knicks fans. Just y'all got a lot to work for.
Well, I love seeing the small market teams get bigger and really get hungry for some success, like we're seeing with the Timberwolves with their new ownership. Obviously trading as much as they did to get Gobert, and then now you got Cleveland trying to do something post LeBron and show that they can win without him. And they've been drafting really well lately, which is something that they had not been known for. Throughout LeBron's time, they had drafted terribly. But since he's left, great draft picks. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe somebody had their hand in the pot a little bit too much. It's a little, piece of class. But, I'm excited to see more small market teams jump up. Obviously, Atlanta Hawks aren't really a small market team, but in terms of relevancy, they're a little different than the usual suspects, I would say, too. And they made a big trade.
Yeah, for sure. What a weird career to look at, like Kevin Love. How he's like goes from in the finals to the worst team in the league back to the playoffs, all on the same tenure on the team. How weird.
Yeah, he was trying to force his way off of the Cavs, and now like that they got good again. He was trying hard last year and became like a good bench player, and it was like, oh yeah, this was possible the whole time, Kevin, if you just had your head out of your ass.
Yeah, what a nice bench now with Karras. They retained Rubio, right? And
Rubio's coming back.
Yep, they retained Rubio and Karras off the bench. Insane. Like, how do you get a superstar and still have that type of depth?
Yeah, they got a great team. I think that's probably my second favorite team in the league right now.
Oh wow.
I mean, I would say because they're in the East, so
they're exciting. They're good underdog.
Not really competitor with the Wolves, and I think like they're a similar type of market as the Wolves. So
yeah,
I love to see the underdogs win, and they have a lot of fun players on this team.
Grizzlies of the East, but great, perfect. Can't wait to see.
Grizzlies are full of whinies, but
that's true. Can't wait to see the Cavs in the playoffs next year. That's gonna be super exciting. They're back to winning basketball. But speaking of winning basketball, let's talk about the century. I think it was Bleacher Report released this this graphic that I'm gonna put up right now for you guys. It's winning percentage since 2000, and it shows which teams were the best, which teams were the worst over the last 22 years. What sticks out to you looking at this right away? And who you surprised is bad? Who you surprised is good?
Man, I gotta get the graphic up here.
Oh yeah. No, let me jump in. So first off, what's unsurprising is the Knicks are the worst winning percentage of the century. Not surprised. I guess this is the shitting on Knicks episode, but man, That's got to be tough. I mean, as a Magic fan, saying that's tough. I don't know, but 45%? No, more than 45. They're just not up there. But bottom three teams: Timberwolves, Wizards, Hornets, all make sense. None of those are outliers. All of them, that's par for the course. That's what it sounds like. One that is surprising to me is the Warriors. Warriors are just right above average, so they're right above the middle of the winning percentage, and it's kind of surprising. You've seen they've formed a dynasty this century. Even before that, they had Gilbert Arenas, Davis, Richardson. They had good players. I guess they just either were sticking. They didn't start really winning until up until recently. I mean, they had the best record of all time this century. So that's kind of weird to see them as 15th or 14th, 15th on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little surprising, but they have had some really bad years mixed in there,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they had a bad year 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors, honestly, they were really not like a historic franchise at all till this run. They did struggle for years. When they had the Baron Davis years, that was as good as it was for 20 years.
Yeah.
Before that.
Yeah, and struggled with Monta Ellis for 7 years. That was a whole thing too.
Yeah, I mean, they were good enough to be okay for a bit, but it wasn't anything that was really substantial.
True. I guess they've only had 6 dominant years out of the 22 years, so that really, because 6 from 2015 minus, it's been 7 years, but minus the one for when they drafted Wiseman. So that, I guess that does, math wise, it makes sense. It's just looking at what up to this point, it's just kind of weird to see them that low.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a great stretch run now, and obviously that's ascending them on the ranks, but I would assume before this run, they were probably for sure in the 20s on this list.
Yeah. And right above them, just barely, are the Raptors too. This is another team where I'm kind of surprised that they're in the middle. I mean, obviously, they've just been kind of mediocre since Kawhi left, but I mean now they've stayed in the playoffs. But even then, Vince, DeRozan period, they've had some good periods this century. It's just, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, they were terrible after they had Vince, and they only had Vince for a couple of years until he forced his way out. But they had him and McGrady for a moment. I don't even know if those guys crossed paths. If they did, it was a season.
Probably fell in the 90s too.
But then it was, spending the first overall pick on Andrea Bargnani. It was it was a lot of years with Chris Bosh where they just weren't winning games. They had a losing season every year. But Chris Bosh was their guy. It was the fan favorite. He was an all-star, so they weren't interested in ever getting rid of him, till he eventually left, and then he went to Miami. And shortly after that, they got DeRozan, and eventually they started winning games with him too. But even that took a while.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. Did you get a chance to look at it again?
I got no idea where this image is.
Probably check
my phone.
Yeah.
I don't got my phone on me.
Oh, that's fine. Well,
you sent it to my Facebook. I can pull it up.
I can't. Oh, yeah, I can send it to your Facebook. All right, so I'll say my most surprising though is the Jazz. Actually, they're back on another topic. They're the 4th best record this century.
Yeah,
that's pretty insane, huh?
That is interesting. They have always been a very stable franchise, but you don't think of them as one that's had a ton of superstars. All right, I got the list now. So yeah, I mean, they're right there with Boston, LA, and Miami, which is surprising. But they had some good years with Darren Williams, ones where they weren't gonna ever win a championship, but they were certainly a good team. And then obviously they've had a really solid run now with this Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert team, and really that didn't last. That didn't start that long after the Darren Williams group. They didn't have any terrible years because they got Donovan Mitchell with the 15th pick in the draft, or in that trade at least. That's where he was picked originally. Yeah, and they were immediately in the playoffs. If you remember that, his rookie years fighting off OKC. Yeah, year one he dragged them there. So clearly a transcendent player.
Yeah, I mean, they had Okur for like 6.5 years. He was a pretty decent center. Plus, this is the 2000s, so
They
it's
had
like
Karolinko. He was great too. They did have a
Karolinko
very
was.
solid starting team with Karolinko, Mehmet Okur, and I feel like there's somebody else mixed in there, but
Boozer
Karolinko
was
like their
with
best
Williams. Carlos Boozer was with Williams too. So they had
player. Yep, that was a
duos.
great duo. Yeah,
Right.
so they've always done a great job at like pivoting and finding like a good to great player or a couple of them.
Mhm.
And to at least keep them in relevancy. They just haven't really done a great job at putting themselves over the top. Like
Right.
the closest we've really seen was when they were the 1 seed, but then they lost in the second round anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like all the company. They're with the Lakers, Celtics, Miami, Mavericks, Spurs. They've all won championships, but not them. I mean, the 2000s does include the tail end of the Stockton, Malone era, but still, obviously. So that's probably why they're so high too.
Yeah, they've done a great job at carving out that consistency, but they definitely are the anomaly here. Obviously, the Rockets are there too, but they're a little bit lower than these other ones. But I still think like the Rockets had a fantastic chance to win a championship multiple years, and they were very close to doing it. I think 2017, but then Chris Paul got hurt, and they weren't able to beat the Warriors. They had their best years when the Warriors had their best years, and like couldn't pick a worse time.
Yeah, that's the way it happens. I mean, that's the magic. Penny and Shaq just happened to be going against Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. You know, that's just that's the way it is. Like that's probably one of the best teams in the NBA. They just were against each other. So that's the way it happens. But looking at this list, any other ones that just jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas obviously got to recognize their success regardless of only having really one superstar the whole time. Mm-hmm. But they've always had great regular seasons. They've done a great job at getting the top seed in most playoffs, and it's paid off with a championship. It's paid off with a couple of conference finals appearances. So, you know, hats off to them, and obviously the Spurs. We all know why they're there. Their consistency is insane, but
the Greg effect.
Yeah, the Greg effect and the big three they had forever. Like rare to see something like that.
Longest playoff streak in history, like 22 years in the playoffs or whatever it was.
Yeah. So it's just hard to see like that type of continuity between that same group of players for that long. It's unheard of. Guys have too big of egos usually, and I mean, what's a team that you can think of where their duo or trio you think is going to stay together like for the majority of their entire careers?
Like current players?
The current teams, you could see that happening.
Warriors.
Similar to Spurs. Yeah, I mean, the Warriors are really the only example. I mean, is there any outside of that? The Warriors are an easy one because they've already won the championships, I guess. So minus the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, I see some potential out there with the Pistons, with Cade, Hardy, and who's
that's a hot take.
I do
get the air horn.
I do think they're I guess Bagley doesn't really count, but those guys, I think they have enough to possibly stay together. I think the Magic are gonna get blown up at some point. It doesn't really matter, but
yeah.
Active players, everyone wants to go everywhere, so it's really tough to see that loyalty. That loyalty's rare now, like you just said. So
yeah, you know, I'm gonna put a vote out there for my Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns has said that he never ever wants to leave Minnesota. So him, Anthony Edwards, and Rudy Gobert, the rest of their career. But it's obviously not the same longevity as the Spurs. They drafted each of those guys.
Yeah. I mean they. Edwards has been drafted. Edwards and Cat were drafted.
Edwards and Towns are both drafted.
What? One of them, Ginobili, was a draft night trade, wasn't he?
I think so. I mean, he was a later pick because he was coming over from Europe, obviously. But I mean, he actually still might have been a decently high pick. He was a good prospect.
Yeah, but I also don't think Anthony Edwards is going to spend his career with the Timberwolves. He just seems like a big market guy. I know. I'm sorry. I want him to stay.
I'm good. That's it. I'm calling in my hit, man. They're gonna get you now.
I'm driving 40 minutes. Beat some ass.
We're gonna move on from that tomfoolery. The winning percentage since 2001. We realized the Spurs reign king. Funny to see where they're at now. We have lived through their dynasty. We have seen the end of it. Greg Popovich is still there, so he's trying to bridge to the next generation. But we're moving on, talking about bounce back players for this season, and we're doing this episode focused on Paul George. Paul George missed a lot of last season with a couple different injuries, but him and Kawhi really haven't been able to get this whole thing going as much as we would love to see them do, and really think this is a year that they can do it. Obviously, they're both coming back, but specifically with Paul George, what do you want to see from him? Just in terms of like his stat line this year, types of plays. Is he going to have to change his play style?
So when Paul George got traded, when Kawhi went there, I was super excited for this team. Even though all those other super teams were made that summer, I was like, the Clippers are it. Injuries have bogged him down. Only played 31 games last year. He hasn't played over 55 games since 2019, and that was his MVP candidate year. So I don't think he has to change much. He came in at the tail end of last year, was an inefficient scorer, but he was getting, just like a lot of big scorers we know, like guards like CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, they struggled at the beginning of the season because the new rule changes, whatever. I do think this is it. Everything builds to this year. The Clippers have built this year. The depth is made literally to watch out for the injuries of Kawhi and Paul George. They have just a slew of wings that they can throw in and out of the lineups. But I think he's going to be great. I think ultimately he's the leader on this team. Because you look, Kawhi's a quiet guy. Kawhi wasn't the leader in any of his teams. Maybe on the by example, but that doesn't really count as much. So it's going to be on Paul George to really push this team forward. They got him what they've needed, and that's a floor general. They got him John Wall. They literally have all the tools. It's on them, and I think it's on Paul George to become that leader. We always wanted him to be. He was that for the Pacers, just couldn't get by LeBron. But now LeBron's at the end. LeBron has his own struggles. Paul George, this is your year. Get to it, bro.
Yeah, I absolutely think he can have a great season this year. When he did have his MVP season a couple of years ago, he was a great defender, and that's something I'm looking for him to get back to. I think having a solid perimeter defender like John Wall should help him out, and I think having Kawhi Leonard back next to him should help him out as well. And overall, Paul George is, just hopefully healthy enough to keep his legs planted in front of him and not be stumbling back and forth as guys drive to the lane. So I do have trust in him. And, I think he's one of the most exciting players when he is on. Like, offensively, he drives to the rim with force. He's able to shoot the three. He can get really hot and drop a ton on you. He just has like an off night every now and then. But I think this year we're not going to see as many of those off nights.
Yeah, and hopefully all the depth they have with Norman Powell, John Wall, and obviously Kawhi Leonard, because even if he has a bad night, one of them can pick it up. Maybe the GOAT Zubac, maybe he could do it. Probably.
Marcus Morris. Reggie Jackson. They've got a very deep squad for sure.
Robert Covington's in there too. Don't forget about him. He's no slut.
Yeah, he dropped over 50 this last season in a game.
Yeah. So they're ready to make a run. I think the whole team knows it. I think the culture's in there, and it's just gonna, honestly, everything's gonna come out. They know what Kawhi's gonna give him when he comes back from injury. Just guy's a term. He just gets injured, but it doesn't really affect how he plays, which is kind of weird. So I don't think there's much uncertainty around there. I think it's all around Paul George and John Wall, and they're gonna be pushing the narrative this season.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. Season starts next month, and Paul George is looking healthy. He's looking good. So we'll look forward to that. We're moving on to a player who we don't want to see as much. One that we don't love seeing on our TV. And we know that LeBron wants to see less of him as well. Russell Westbrook is probably going to get bought out at some point this season. It's just inevitable. Like, they have his arch nemesis, Patrick Beverley, on the team now. We're going full anime protagonist mode on this. LeBron clearly is at odds with him. They fired Frank Vogel to pretend like that was the answer to their problems. But, like I said, most likely Russell Westbrook will get bought out at some point this season. So the question I ask is, who the hell is going to sign him once he does get bought out? A guy who has no interest in coming off the bench, from what I can tell. a guy who most definitely has no interest in changing his play style. Why would I want him on my team if I am the GM of any NBA team?
Correct. So that's the big question. I actually don't think he's going to get bought out. So he just accepted his player option. He's on an expiring contract. Granted, it's $47 million. That's a hard bullet to bite. I think it's more possible he gets traded.
I think he gets traded and then bought out.
I don't know. Like I don't think he's going to a winning team is my thing. So, and if he goes to teams like the Pacers, which are very rumored, why would it would make sense to buy them out? Let's run with the Pacers. It makes sense for them to buy him out because they're like, we don't want to play him. He's just going to infringe on the rights of Tyrese Halliburton. But then why even make the trade? Like, what are you going to get from the Lakers for?
Because they'll give him a first-round pick or something because the Pacers will give back Miles Turner and someone else, Buddy Hield, while you give back Russell Westbrook and a couple of picks.
However, I think they can get a lot better returns from anyone but the Lakers for those. So, then you look. So, I just don't think. If I were his team, I'd be like, let's just wait it out. Let's actually. I don't know. Now the more I'm talking about it, if you can get him, I don't think Hield is gonna agree to a buyout. $47 million. They're gonna be like, hey, how about 30 and you go play for another team? I don't know if he wants to do that because he's shown clear that he wants a team to build around him. He doesn't want to fit into a team. So
I don't think that's going to lead to the right discussions with the Pacers. I don't think they're going to be like, oh yeah, we'll build around you. I think ultimately the decision would come to buy me out because he doesn't want to play on a team who doesn't have winning aspirations. He wants to be on a winning aspirational team. And he also wants to be the leader. He wants to have it all.
Yeah. No. So that'll get into some of these things. So now that we're into some of the mindset we think he's getting to, where we can only assume this stuff. We don't know Russell Westbrook. We can only assume this stuff what we see in the court. Yeah,
Westbrook.
If
he's listening to this, it's Westbrook.
So the first team, there's two teams that are marginal that I think kind of that might take him. First team. It's probably the most likely in my book, and that's the Wizards. I like Monte Morris, good guy. If Russell Westbrook gets bought out, they just trade it. They have Porzingis. They just got Will Barton too. Yeah, they got Will Barton. It's like, you know what? Maybe Russ come back. Let's see if we can turn something into this Porzingis Beal deal. I don't know. Is he the permanent answer at number one at the point guard? I don't think so. Think he can make a return to the Wizards?
Maybe. I don't really know if Beal's interested in doing that again. I mean, they already separated the thing at one point. They've got a new point guard. Maybe they're happy with Monte Morris and he shows something. Monte Morris at the least knows who he is.
Yeah, for sure. But it is worth saying that him and Beal were very cool when they left. He texted, apparently, I remember the post, and he talked to Beal before he left. And Beal's like, yeah, that's fine. You can go.
I mean, maybe they could run it back for their team that had a below 500 record and just barely made it into the play-in tournament to get into the playoffs. I don't know what the point would be. But that team is not going anywhere.
But this is Wizards type move. I can see the Wizards being like, yeah, maybe. Russ, come back, because they love hanging out in mediocrity. We just made a whole video.
It's still a big salary for them to take on, so they would have to trade out some value.
Oh, this is if he gets bought out by another team.
Oh yeah, if he gets bought out, maybe I could see it, but I don't know if the Lakers are going to buy him out or not. I suppose if they do, Wizards are certainly a potential answer, but ultimately I don't really see that happening. I think the Thunder are the obvious team that most people are going to be pointing to. If he wants to play his last games and retire.
I don't know. I feel like the Thunder wouldn't want to do that. They love Giddey so much. They put so much into him and SGA. I just feel like they wouldn't want to do that. He's gonna completely infringe on what Giddey and SGA are trying to do, and they're trying to develop those guys. Even though Chet's injured, they're gonna try to get those guys on the floor. And I don't see that. I thought about OKC. I'm like, oh yeah, that would be kismet that he returns there. I just don't think that happens. They're an actively rebuilding team.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to have him come off the bench and do a few minutes, and if he's willing to do that role, I could see it happening. I think any team that brings him on is doing it so that he can come off the bench. So if he's not willing to accept a bench role, I think it's time for him to retire.
Okay. What about the Raptors? Move Van Vliet at the 2. Would they want a playmaker like that, or is he just gonna fuck up their spacing's already hard as is? Do you think the Raptors would try to take in
see
him?
them doing that. I mean, they've got plenty of good forwards they can play at the 2.
Yeah.
They've got Gary Trent.
Mm-hmm. Gary Trent. What team I'm pretty sold on is actually the Jazz. I know we've talked about them in every video so far, but listen, like they say take Conley, we'll take Westbrook, we'll ride out his expiring. We don't have a fucking point guard besides Conley. The Lakers would love that. Would you rather, if they're like, hey, take Bogdanovic, give us that first, and like Taylor, Horton, Tucker, we'll just fucking take anything, and we'll give you Bogdanovic and Conley. Think the Lakers would want to do that?
Lakers would maybe want to do it. I don't see why the Jazz would do it unless they can get picks out of it. And is that worth giving up an unprotected first round pick for if you're the Lakers? I don't know. I probably would just stick with what I got at that point. I think they can do something better. They've certainly been trying at least, but Mike Conley is honestly maybe worse than Russell Westbrook at this point. Like, they both suck. Bogdanovic is interesting. That provides a little bit of value, but they need more than him.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think Conley can help a winning team more than Russell Westbrook can help a winning team. Who's the better basketball player? It's probably Russ, but Mike Conley, his locker room presence, his play, I make the difference between Russell Westbrook's playmaking. It's fine, it's good. It's just, it's not winning playmaking. Whereas Conley actually has winning play. He's shown he wasn't an effective scorer, but he could still help the Jazz get to a 5th seed and a first or 2nd seed the year before that. Even though he's not an effective scorer anymore, his defense is slowed down. Bogdanovic, I think, would be really like the pick there. Like that'd be a steal because he could still provide you an efficient 17 points per game, and I think they would love that. And floor spacing, shooting, whatever you need, go get a bucket. I think the Lakers would like that versatility. I think that'd be worth it.
Maybe. I mean, I think they already have Patrick Beverley, who's a better player than Mike Conley at this point. So I don't even know if it matters.
True. True. But maybe they just want, like, Patrick Beverley is an elite playmaker, whereas Conley's a really great playmaker. But last team,
he's also getting paid a ton of money.
Less than Russell
Westbrook.
I guess
like if they make the money work, if they want to, if they figure it out, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not in love with that. But the Lakers don't have a ton of great options, so maybe that's the best they can do.
Yeah, the last team I think would maybe take either throw some salaries together or even take a buyout. Russell Westbrook is the Rockets. I mean, they're like, hey, KPJ's kind of failing. We don't know where he's at. We got 2 guys who need a guy to throw the ball to them because they're off-ball players, and Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. Can you just come in, throw the ball to them, give us a year, sell some tickets, make some exciting basketball? KPJ will move him to the 3 or some shit. You see that happening? Maybe a return to the Rockets?
Maybe. I mean, I would love to see Russell Westbrook fall in love with the idea of mentoring others and not worrying about like his stats as much. Like, if you really want to worry about the assist one, man, just get really good at passing. Like, we know you can do that, so why don't you just show us how great you are at that? We don't really want to see triple doubles anymore for us.
Yeah, and plus
if you can get assists to our guys, great.
Yeah, and the Rockets are one of the few young teams that already have all the shooting around a guy like Russ. So they like Alperen's learning how to shoot. They certainly got guys that are willing to spread the floor. Jalen Green's a knockdown shooter. Jabari's gonna be a knockdown shooter. So we'll see. That's decent.
Yeah, I certainly think they have a good young core in Houston. I'd hate to see Russell mess it up though, but
that's true.
He tends to mess things up for people.
Yes, he does. But what do you guys think? Comment below. Let us know what team would buy out. Is he even getting bought out? Give us your thoughts. Comment below. Let us know. And like and subscribe if you haven't. Our
Yeah,
last
season opener must be coming soon. So I mean, they gotta make a decision if they want him on the team.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. But our last topic, Basketball Forever posted a trade. I thought it was interesting. I wanted to talk about it. You wanted to talk about it. So the trade they talked about is just straight up Anthony Davis for DeAndre Ayton and Cam Johnson. Who says no? And how absurd is this? I feel like this trade is pretty like polar, where some Suns fans can think that's ridiculous. Why would we want Mr. Glass? And Lakers fans would be like, why the fuck are we giving up AD for 2 non-All-Stars? Like, I can see it go both ways. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how things play out this season if that is a viable trade for them. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton, we know, doesn't have the best relationship with Monty Williams and the Suns team overall, but he has a good enough one to get the max contract matched to him this season. So I think it really depends on like if that relationship is mended, if he does end up getting traded, and if things continue going down the path we're at now with him, and if things continue going down the path we are at with Anthony Davis, I think it is certainly possible that we see a fresh start, or both teams wanting to get a fresh start, and that could be a reasonable swap where if the Lakers are able to keep LeBron, DeAndre Ayton's a nice guy to put next to him, and LeBron's going to pull out a lot of his strengths. If they're not able to keep LeBron and they blow things up and they're able to make a trade like that, well, you've got a really nice young player to bring into your team, and you're the Lakers. You're probably going to be able to sign some free agent in the next year or two that you can put next to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's a great point. That's exactly where I thought was like, I can see the Lakers wanting to do this to be like, you know what? If LeBron leaves, AD's not going to be here. We're going to lose AD. But at least if we make this trade, Ayton wants to have his own team. Ayton and Cam Johnson will stay along even past LeBron. And I think that's what they should start looking at, is the longevity past LeBron's career with the Lakers. And I think that would certainly be it. And like Ayton would want to stay and on the Suns side, the only reason they would think about this is they're looking for a matchup for Giannis, because he hurt him so much and like DeAndre Ayton wasn't enough. And we've all wanted to see Anthony Davis, a fully healthy Anthony Davis and a fully healthy Giannis go at each other in the playoff series. Something we've all wanted to see. So I can certainly see that's the motivation there. But
I mean, certainly that can make a lot of sense. Don't know if that team would make it to the finals, but Anthony Davis, in theory, if he's ever healthy for a full season, is a fantastic player. I mean, he's like a top 5 talent in this NBA when he does that, but he simply cannot stay healthy, and it's never, ever going to happen again. Yeah.
The one season he stayed healthy, they won a championship, but he was unable to, but like, I think it says more that he can't stay healthy than he doesn't. He certainly will if he got traded to the Suns for these, he would raise the ceiling of this team. I think this team could go a lot further than I think they could make it back to the finals.
Offensively, he's very gifted. So, I mean, I feel like he's a step over DeAndre in that way. And defensively, when he, isn't hurting and he's not shying away from contact, he's also one of the best in the game.
Yeah, he's a more versatile defender than DeAndre Ayton, certainly. So, I mean, but if you look at it, you got to look at the way the team's made up. This just logistically, the Suns wouldn't make this trade because you got teams like to pray for the best, hope for the worst, whatever. So he gets injured. Who are you falling back on? Sarge and Biyombo are their backup bigs. You're expecting them to play big minutes throughout the season, possibly in the playoffs if Anthony Davis gets hurt. I'm not sold on that.
I mean, the best ability is availability, and DeAndre Ayton's been available a hell of a lot more than Anthony Davis. DeAndre Ayton's still very young, so maybe he'll get injuries later in his career, but right now he looks like a horse you could ride into the war. I mean, Anthony Davis is more like the crippled donkey, and you can't really trust him if you're going to battle.
No, yeah, exactly. And I mean, who knows? Maybe it gets to trade season and DeAndre Ayton's like, I don't want to be a Sun anymore. I can't take this. I got to go. Maybe this is something they entertain. And maybe the Lakers, they're not doing as well as they want. And like, they're still playing like sub 500 basketball this year. And they're like, all right, it's time to look past LeBron's longevity here. We gotta do something to create a future for ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe this is an avenue they go down.
Yeah, I think this year will be interesting for both the Suns and the Lakers. Obviously, if neither of them wins the championship, I think you're going to see those teams try to make some moves and switch things up. Obviously, we've got the Suns, like they've got Chris Paul, but he's only getting older each day. They've got Devin Booker, who obviously is a great player, but soured relationships with Ayton. So Mikal Bridges is a great player, but I definitely think like after this year, they're going to be trying to upgrade. They're going to be trying to find a way to bring in a star player next to Booker.
Yep. They have to. So there's only so much they can do. And so, but what do you guys think of this trade? Who says no? Is it the Lakers that say no? Are we outlandish for thinking it's the Suns that say no? Comment below. Let us know.
Yes. And that, my folks, was episode 52, Strictly Ball Business. We talked much about the NBA. Did we miss any topics? Did we get them all?
No, we got them all.
Yeah.
Well, we missed one because we had a topic, but then Donovan Mitchell gets fucking traded right after I make my notes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
we were going to talk about Mitchell's fit on the Wizards potentially, but he goes to a different East team instead. And, we're excited to see what happens with Cleveland this season. I think, when does the NBA season start? Is it like the 17th of October?
I got it right here. Hold on. One sec. It's coming up. It's coming. Oh, preseason starts September 30th. That's not what I wanted. Well, I probably can't.
I think it's like around the 17th of October. I think it is like mid-October. So, that's coming up. We're excited for that. And, give us a comment on our video if you've got any suggestions for what we should talk about next. And we'll be excited to communicate with you.
October 18th, Tuesday, October 18th.
October 18th, that's the day.
That's the day. Week 1, 2K. 2K comes out next week. We'll be making 2K videos once we figure out the logistics of recording. Because
there's not too many logistics. You just press share on your controller, and then it'll record our voice. We just will not have our faces, is the problem. But our beautiful voices will be there. And we can always still have our regular episode that does show our faces once per week as well.
Yeah, we'll be doing rebuilds. You guys suggest what you want to see us do.
Yeah, we got to do some rebuilds.
We'll talk about it. We'll plan a lot of my career too, but so look out for us in the park.
Yes. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Shit. I know this.